Hey, everybody.
All right, Mayor. All right, I think we have all the bodies we need, and I'll call to order the Joint Public Safety Committee and Recreation Committee meeting on July 19th, 2021. Good afternoon, everybody. We've almost got a full quorum of a full council meeting with a number of folks on here, and it's good to see everybody after a long weekend. Councilmember Sackman, if I could call on you, please, sir, to lead us in a moment of silence or an invocation, please.
Thank you. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of our community. In your name, amen.
Amen. Yep. Thank you, sir. The clerk pointed out to me that agenda items number 5, 6, 7, and 8 require both approvals by public safety and recreation. So I would entertain a motion that we go out of order to take up items 5, 6, 7, and 8 first, and then swing back, and public safety will pick up the remaining items on there. Just such a motion.
So moved.
Second. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Wonderful. All right. So I think this is going to be the Susan Herdina and Steve Lumlin show. These ordinance 5, 6, 7, and 8 are somewhat related to one another. You should have received a memorandum from Heather about the outline on these ordinances. So Susan, do you want to tee this up a little bit and pass it on to Steve?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. This is some ordinances the legal department has been working on for a number of months to address several recent issues that have arisen within the city.
Susan, it's kind of hard to hear you for some reason.
I'm going to turn my video off. I'm sorry.
And actually, if everyone could keep their mics on mute while Steve and Susan are presenting.
Thanks, Jennifer.
I'll try that again. So basically,
that's much better. Thank you.
Working on this to address some recent issues that have come up, as well as once we started getting into the different ordinances, we realized that we really needed to update some of these permits to make them more understandable to the public. And so with that in mind, the police department, primarily with Steve and Heather, as well as support from Sterling and Mallory, have been working on these, and there's several of them. They interrelate with each other, and that is the reason why we asked for this joint committee today. And I guess I'll turn it over to Steve, and he'll do a brief summary if that's what you'd like, Councilmember Shade. Chairman, we did send out the memo in an effort to try to streamline the discussion today. Would you like to proceed with Steve giving a short summary of the?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I think, Steve, if you could pick up from what Susan has led off with, please, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and this was really a group effort, and much credit to Heather for driving this, and also to Sterling, who did a lot of the drafting in this. But then we all met as a group on a weekly basis to go over these changes, and we also involved different departments of the city, special events committee, Parks and Recreation, because they were all affected by this. And of course, we had lots of input from our officers in the police department who deal with these issues on a regular basis to make sure this all made sense to them and was not going to make their job harder. The goal, of course, is to make this all easier. So Captain Bruder had pointed out some interesting statistics on a call earlier today that said in 2018, we had a total of 3 permits. In 2019, a total of 3 permits. In 2020, which was basically about a half a year, we had 82 permits. And so far in 2021, we've had 61. So as you can see, there's been a significant increase in the amount of permits that we're issuing in the interest of the public in obtaining these permits. So we're very busy with permits the last couple of years. When looking at our statutory scheme, We have the parade permit, but traditionally what people think of as a parade isn't conducive with what we're seeing in these demonstrations. They're not necessarily parades, but involve other issues that aren't parades. So what we did is we got rid of the parade permit. We moved parades over into special events. You can still have a parade. It's just going to be a special event instead of a parade permit that you would get. And we've established a new ordinance, which would be First Amendment demonstrations, and you would obtain a permit for that. And our hope is to make the process more clear and also to outline the rules that apply, because many of the rules that apply are rules that come out of case law, constitutional case law, as far as time, place, and manner restrictions. And what we tried to do is take some of that case law and make it into an ordinance, so everyone's clear as to what the rules are when you apply for a permit and actually have an event that involves the First Amendment. We want to ensure that people are able to exercise their First Amendment rights, but we also, in doing that, want to make sure that we maintain order, safety, and use and enjoyment of all public areas in the city for the other members of the public that may not be engaged in that First Amendment activity. So preserving the right to First Amendment activity, but also allowing other people to enjoy the city as well. And then finally, we wanted to prepare for the implementation of the Open Carry with Training Act, which was passed and signed by the governor back in May and goes into effect on August 15th. And in that act, the city is given the authority to restrict the open carry of firearms at events in the city. And I believe it's the desire of the mayor to make that a rule for all city events. And so we're amending our statutory scheme to reflect that if you're going to have an event in the city, that there's not going to be open carry at that event, and then what the rules are as far as implementing that. So the actual demonstrations ordinance is really kind of the crux of this. The other amendments to like special events and park permitting, that sort of thing, we've amended those to reflect the amendments we've made to the demonstrations ordinance, and we've added some rules to the parks. But really, the demonstrations ordinance is kind of the crux of this whole thing. And so we've come up with a definition for demonstrations, which I believe we've modeled off of the federal laws and regulations. And a demonstration can be 1,000 people. A demonstration can be as little as one person. If you're going to have a demonstration of 25 or more people, you have to get a permit. If you're less than 25 people, you don't have to get a permit. However, the rules that are applicable to demonstrations apply to those smaller groups. So there's certain time, place, and manner restrictions that we built into the ordinance that would apply across the board, regardless of how large a group is. As I stated, we built in the open carry prohibition into the demonstrations ordinance. We've also restated the law with regards to pointing or presenting firearms at people at demonstrations, as well as brandishing weapons. Certainly weapons at demonstrations create a huge issue for the police and public in general. We want to make sure that we regulate that as much as we can. We've also indicated that if your demonstration is going to last more than 3 hours, or if you want to reserve a particular area of the city for your event, if your event occurs on a regular or frequent basis, or if your event's going to require services of other city departments beyond that of the police department, that's going to kick you into the special events committee realm, and you'll have to meet with them to do some more planning. We can't just issue that on short notice. You're going to have to plan for that in advance. You can apply as few as 3 days before, or as far as 30 days out. Much of the standards for issuance are taken from the parade permit ordinance. Not much has changed there, but of course, if there's another event going on in the city that's going to draw the police department and other departments to that event and you want to have an event at the same time, we're going to tell you, you may have to plan your event for another day or another week sometime in the future, because we don't have the resources to accommodate a number of events all at the same time. The appeals process, we changed that. It used to go before City Council. We've now put that before the Public Safety Committee, so people can appeal and get their issue heard on a sooner basis than they otherwise would. Of course, like I said, the chief has the option of offering applicants alternate dates if there's another event going on at the same location, or resources are allocated to another event. And then as far as the regulations, you can't block or obstruct or interfere with pedestrian or vehicular traffic. We've moved the demonstrations off of monuments, fountains, statues, that sort of thing. So you can still go and protest at a monument or a statue, but you can't stand right on it, so others can't have access to it. So we're going to establish areas around those monuments and statues where people can express their First Amendment opinions, but the general public will still be able to access those statues and monuments so they can see what the placards say and enjoy the monument.
Hey, Steve, this is Dudley.
Yes, sir.
So the 15 feet rule would be applicable, right?
Yes, so that would be from the outermost edge of the monument. So some monuments have like a walkway around them that would be outside the walkway. Some are just an obelisk that sticks straight out of the ground. That would be from the base of the statue. And again, the police would go out and look at that area and establish what makes the most sense. You know, if you had opposing groups, you wouldn't want them right next to each other. So we put one group in one area, one group in the other. They'd still be able to see each other and hear each other, but they wouldn't be able to just, you know, fight each other right there at the monument. So
Steve, one more question for you. If it's only one or two people, right, they're not going to have to necessarily have a permit. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay, now, if the one or two becomes organic, and I think somewhere in this you guys talk about it, if it becomes organic and that two swells beyond the 25, right, what would we do in that case?
Well, so the case law establishes, and now we've kind of codified it. So as whether it's a group of one or two or a group of 100, the chief of police, you know, and his designee have the ability to move the group to a designated area to ensure the safety of all involved. So, I mean, even like as it applies to monuments and statues, even a one person can't necessarily stand on a statue with a sign. We've moved them just off to the 15 feet, and they could stand off to the side and get their point across.
Yeah, not quite my question. My question is, okay, we've got two people, they're going to protest, okay, and within that process, that two people ends up being 25 or more. Would the chief then have the authority to shut that down and tell them that they need to go forward with the permitting process?
I think technically, yes. I mean, if you organize an event that draws a big crowd, you should have gotten the permit, and it could be declared an unlawful assembly, and he could disperse that group and tell them to apply for a permit. That said, if it wasn't really planned to be that way and people just seem to show up to it, I think what we've done is we've tried to accommodate that. And so, like I said, we look at the situation, and the chief or his designee would be able to move that group into an area where it'd be safe for all in the area, for them to have their First Amendment event, and for the general public to still enjoy the area.
Okay, it's still kind of a gray area for me.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess it depends on the circumstances, but again, we've tried to accommodate, but you know, the idea of someone just advertising, hey, everyone show up in Marion Square for an event tonight and not get a permit. No, that's against the ordinance, and that we would probably disperse.
Okay, thanks for that answer.
And Mr. Co-Chairman, the other thing that Steve mentioned, in case we didn't pick up on it, was that in the event it does swell to this 25 or greater, the rules that we're talking about here, the restrictions that we're talking about here will apply. So they have to comply with at least that portion of restrictions regarding as outlined in these proposed ordinances. Mr. Mayor, I saw your hand up.
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
A couple observations, and I'll open the floor up for some more questions. Steve, as you were going through the very first part of this, I was writing down these numbers of permits. In my mind, immediately I was thinking about permits for concealed weapons, and it's not. It's permits for assembly folks, for parades and things of that nature. And if you do read the new state law that goes into effect about open carry, there is a litany of exceptions and restrictions that are available for local municipalities to apply. And so when you take these proposed ordinances and you take the statute, the law that's going to go into effect by mid-August, you see what the scheme that Steve and company have tried to put together to make sure that they match with one another, and that we're taking advantage of some of those restrictions. So I think is a very common sense approach to all of this. So we want to make sure that we're ahead of the game and that we've got these ordinances in place at the same time that the state law goes into effect as well. Those comments, I'll open the floor for any questions by any committee members. Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I want to start by thanking the staff for their fine work on all of this. And as Steve mentioned, with the increasing number of applications we've had over the last year or so, to bring some consistent. And so when they started looking into the parade permits, well, they needed to, quote, clean up special events and then park events and then try to make the rules consistent and all like that. So it was quite a bit of an undertaking. Sterling and Heather, Steve, Susan, thank y'all for efforts on this. And I think it does do that. It brings consistency. You know, it helps direct people where they need to go for what kind of event they want to have. It honors our constitutional right to express ourselves in the city, which is important, but does so in a mindset of keeping everyone safe, the folks having the event and the folks who might not be having, who are not participating. So I think all that is good, and I thank them for their work. There was one other point I was going to make, and now I've forgotten it. Thank you.
We'll come back to it. Chief Reynolds, any comments from you?
Yeah, I just want to thank Heather and Steve and Susan and their entire team, as well as and Julia, I think I see on the call, and others who were a part of this. Other department heads were consulted or their representatives. I think this was a very collaborative effort, and legal kind of led the conversation. It was certainly not police centric, it was city centric. And it was a lot of discussion about just how it's already been said, but I'll just say we could collapse things, make it more efficient, and make sure that everybody had input and make sure that we do everything possible to honor the ability to do these events safely. And Jason and others have been, I think, heavily involved since day one. And we're satisfied that this is a net improvement. And that it's a good step in the right direction as we continue to navigate these challenging circumstances. We're thankful for the support.
Thank you, Chief. Any council member have a question, comment, suggestion? The one thing that the mayor mentioned this, and to pick up on this a little bit more, is that, you know, at city council meetings, we hear from citizen complaints, how come we're allowed to let that kind of protest go into effect? And then we've also heard from citizen complaints that they thought that the denial or restrictions on these assemblies were not fair. So what I'm very much impressed with these ordinances is that it answers a lot of those questions. So when a citizen says, how come that is allowed? We can clearly say, because of these ordinances, the way that they're written, these are the rules, these are the restrictions of these ordinances, and they're allowed to assemble it. Because everybody has a right to express themselves. The question is making sure that we do it in a manner that's fair to them, to the public, to our police department, so we know exactly what the rules are. And then when someone complains and says that shouldn't have happened that way, we can look to this and say, this is the way that it's written out, and you've got an appeal process that's very clear and very timely on addressing that as well. Councilmember Saccharin.
Thank you, Chair. I do have I guess, a question for the chief, more of a tactical question regarding the open carry training. So is the impetus behind that? So I've been down to White Point Gardens and down and seen folks walking around with a weapon. So if someone is walking around with a weapon, is the thought that we can then confiscate that weapon, arrest them? Like, how does that work? What does that look like?
So the new open carry law, which takes effect August 15th, is something that we're still actually doing research on, working with the State Criminal Justice Academy and others to make sure that we incorporate. There's a lot of case law behind it. But the simple answer is that those people that have a concealed weapon permit today can in the future carry, if they have a permit, they can carry openly. However, as the mayor alluded to there, in the way that the law is written, it allows for the local ordinances and local jurisdictions, municipalities to have some restrictions. And this would be one of them. So for a protest event, you wouldn't be able to have an open carry. And the mayor has incorporated that into our conversation. It's incorporated into this ordinance. And I think it's the right thing for all the right reasons. And we've tried to find the right balance to make sure that obviously we don't go sideways of the Constitution, that we don't go sideways with the state laws that have been enacted now. It's going to be a really challenging circumstance otherwise, but for permitted and events that fit this ordinance, otherwise following in the encumbrance of this ordinance, they're not allowed to openly carry. They'll still be able to, as I understand it, I think from Steve, they'll still be able to, if they have a concealed weapons permit, they can still have a concealed weapon.
Thank you, Chief.
Quick question for legal. Do we have any existing challenges to the current ordinance? And if so, how many?
Which ordinance are you referring to? The parade ordinance?
Yes.
No.
Okay, to any of them, do we have any challenges or appeals that we know of? Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Griffin, I see your hand up.
Yes, sir. I just want to commend all of our staff for coming up with these and being ahead of the game. I know that our city has taken a stance that we're not excited about this open carry law. However, as a subsidiary of our state government, when our state legislator passes something, we have to implement it. And there are many people in our city that follow good gun safety. And I'm one of those people. I have my concealed weapons permit, took a class, and there are many other people out there like me that practice good, proper gun safety. But when we have an event that could have two polar opposite groups that are out there protesting, it just isn't a good idea to have a weapon out there. And I hope that our citizens will see that this is a common sense approach to making sure that everybody stays safe while you exercise that freedom of assembly. I just want to make sure that we have checked with the attorneys up in Alan Wilson's office to make sure that there aren't going to be any issues with our amendments and our new laws, and make sure that they're not contradictory to this state law. I'm sure we've done all of that already. Before I take the vote, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and there's not going to be any issues with Columbia with these laws that we were presented with today. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Steve or Susan or Sterling?
Yeah, I can answer it as it pertains to the open carry with training. The language that appears in our ordinances is taken from the state statute. And basically what we put in our ordinance is a restatement of state law. So it is completely consistent with what they wrote and what authority we have. We haven't added anything to that or tried to push the envelope on that in any way. It's basically a restatement of state law.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for that answer.
That was a good answer, and I guess the issue really came to hit me in the face a little bit, Councilmember Griffin, when I got this SLED guidance on the open carry locations. And yes, I believe staff has done an excellent job making sure we conform. But I also wanted to point out that we didn't want to just do this for demonstrations where you might have, as you described, opposite groups gathering where there could be a conflict, but just as a public safety environment. The State House doesn't allow folks to bring weapons into the State House. We don't allow it in city council chambers or city offices. So you just extend that. And I think just from a public safety, now that it is legal with permit to open carry, where you can visibly see a weapon, that for, a Spoleto concert or any festival where large numbers of people are gathered in public spaces, I feel it would benefit public safety to ask those with a permit not to bring their weapons. So we wanted to apply it really across the board to city buildings and to parks and to city-sponsored events, city permitted events.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Captain Bruto, I think you had your hand up a moment ago. Do you wish to comment?
Yes, sir. Just for a minute, regarding the First Amendment demonstration ordinance, I talked to just about every one of these organizers for these events when they do get a permit. And this is something that I think they'll appreciate as well, because every one of them wants to have a safe and peaceful event, and they want to know the guidelines for which to do that. So I think, thanks to the team, that this is going to help our group a lot in reviewing these and having discussions with organizers. But I think it's something that's wanted from both sides, if you will, not only to make it clear for the city as to what we're going to do, but also on the organizer side of what they need to do. And if they want to have a larger event, how to go about doing that. And that's through the special event side. So I appreciate everybody for taking the time to put that together.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Councilmember Griffin, you had a...
Yes, sir. I just want to say, Mr. Mayor, I completely agree with you on the open carry part, public safety. When you see somebody walking around a festival or a city park with the open carry, then that could be a sense of scaring somebody. But can we get some clarification? I think Chief Reynolds mentioned that a CWP holder would still be able to conceal carry that weapon. Can we get some clarification as to a CWP holder, whether or not they'll be able to conceal their weapon, or is this just directly related to open carry?
It is just related to open carry. So the state statute says that we have the authority to temporarily restrict the open carry of firearms. So that would not only be handguns or concealable weapons, that would also include long guns at these permitted events. But it does not mention concealed carry. So I believe that's still permissible.
That's
No,
what
we-
I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
we're very fortunate in this country with our Bill of Rights. But with that freedom comes also responsibility. And I think that's what we're trying to codify here is those responsibilities to exercise your rights, whether to carry a gun, to assemble, to protest, to march, whatever. So I want to echo the comments from others about the work that our legal staff has done on all this. Job well done. Thank you all very much. I would entertain a motion. Mayor, did you want to say something else?
I just, for clarification, and Steve, I'm looking at the SLED guidance that I was just referring to, but according to this, and as you know, I'm not an attorney, but it does say that public and private employers still have the right to post a sign that says no concealable weapons allowed, and that would apply to both open carry and concealed weapons. One example would be coming to city council chambers. We scan you when you come in. If you had a concealed weapon, we would ask you to take it back somewhere rather than allow you in our city council chambers. So employers and the public the way I read this, does have the right to ask people not to bring weapons, both concealed and open, for what it's worth.
That is correct, Mayor. And actually, there's a number of places you currently can't bring a concealed weapon, and all those places you can't bring a open carry weapon as well. So, government buildings are places you can't bring any kind of weapon. Of course, people have the option of prohibiting them in their businesses, in their residences. You can't bring them into a school. You can't bring them into a law enforcement building, a detention center. So there's still a large, list of places you can't bring any kind of weapon, whether it's concealed or otherwise. So you are correct with it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, I think we can do this. We can take items 5, 6, 7, and 8 as one vote if there's a motion to do that.
So move.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. So I'll entertain a motion that we adopt agenda items 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Aye.
Aye.
Is there a second to that? All right.
It has been
Second.
Councilmember
seconded.
Griffin said yes, and Councilmember Gregory seconded that. So we'll call the vote to adopt and recommend to full council items 5, 6, 7, and 8. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that conducts the joint portion of our Public Safety and Recreation Committee. I appreciate everybody taking the time out in the middle of the afternoon to join us and to participate. Again, many thanks to our legal staff for all their fine work on putting this together in such quick order, I may add, as well. We will move on to just the portions of this agenda that deal with public safety. I don't want to kick anybody off. Y'all can stay along, and glad to have the company, but whatever is your preference. So
See you later.
for those of you, I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Well, I'm dropping like flies off my screen here.
I'm going to stick around if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Congratulations, Harry. We'll talk. Bye-bye.
All right. So we'll move on to item number 2. This is approval to submit an application for the 2021 BJA Smart Policing Initiative grant of $500,000, and there's no match for this grant. So
Move for approval.
is that a motion for approval? That's Councilman Shealy? Yep. All right. Any other questions, discussions about item number 2? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of item number 2 signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 3 is approval to submit an application for the 2021 BJA Connect and Protect law enforcement behavioral health response. I think we had this discussion similar on something else. I'll entertain a motion to adopt item number 3 as well.
Move for approval.
Is there a second, Mr. Mayor?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion as to item number 3? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 4 is approval to submit an application for the 2021 Police Assisted Addiction and Recovery Initiative AmeriCorps. There's a match of $2,500. I'll entertain a
Move
motion
for
to
approval.
adopt 4. Is there a second, Mr. Mayor?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion as to item number 4? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we're going through this agenda pretty quickly. I thought we'd be here for quite a while. All right. Item number 9 is the last item, and this is an ordinance to amend Chapter 28 related to the promotion of civil sidewalks. I think we've had this discussion before as to certain components of this sidewalk ordinance. And let's see if we have a motion to approve it first, and we'll go to Steve for further clarification. Is there a
Move for
motion for
approval.
number 9?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay. It's been properly moved and seconded. Steve, do you want to give us some more insight as to this particular item?
So just briefly, the ordinance as it currently exists provides that we report, the chief of police report to this committee and the council the effectiveness of the ordinance. And so we issued that report, I believe, back in late April. At the May Public Safety Committee meeting, we went over that report. Lieutenant Byrne gave some insight as to how the ordinance was working on the street and suggested several amendments, which after those were suggested, the mayor asked that I draft the ordinance to reflect those suggestions, and that's what I did. And the 4 are basically that the ordinance be amended to provide that it covers not only a person actually sitting or lying on the sidewalk, but also a person sitting on private property such that their body, any part of their body is on the sidewalk or their belongings, which basically has the same effect of blocking the traffic on the sidewalk. The second part of that was a kind of a clerical issue where the Market Street between Meeting and King Street is neither north nor south Market Street, it's just Market Street. So we amended the ordinance to reflect that block is also covered in the ordinance, even though it's not either north or south Market Street. There was a provision in there that a person be given a warning before they be issued a citation. And since the ordinance has been in effect a number of years, we felt that it was no longer necessary to warn someone, that we could issue the citation on first encounter, with the caveat that in working with our homeless liaison, Mr. Jardine, that we are not issuing citations or arresting people on first offenses. We are trying to offer them services before we take the step of issuing a citation. But if it's a person that we've seen on a number of occasions, we can issue that citation without the warning. And then the final provision that was amended was that a second or subsequent offender can be put on trespass notice from the area for a period of up to 6 months. So if you're a person that is a chronic offender, we can prohibit you from that area where you've gotten your tickets.
Very good. Thank you for that. Any members of the committee have a question for Steve or for the comment? Before I call the vote, we still have 3 council members who are not members of the committee who hung around. So I want to give them the opportunity. And I'll start with Councilmember Jackson. Do you have any comments or questions?
Thank you. I've just found the whole meeting on all the topics very instructive, and I agree with all the decisions that you're going to recommend to us tomorrow night.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Griffin, do you wanted to hang around?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I have kind of I agree that with all of these provisions, I would like to see us continue to look at how our sidewalks are being utilized. I've been getting videos of some of our sidewalks on King Street over the past week, and the lines outside that are blocking up the sidewalks are still outrageous, even with the provisions that have been made with the mobile food vendors. But I'm sure there's going to be some more discussion on that, and I would love it if at a subsequent public safety meeting, if we could get that back on there to get an update, just how that process has worked out, what's worked, what hasn't worked. Because I can tell you, gentlemen, I'm happy to send you all these videos. The line outside of the establishments starting at 8 o'clock at night until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning is still excessive. So would love an opportunity to share that with y'all, and hopefully at our next public safety meeting, Mr. Chairman, maybe you can get that on there to get an update on how that process has worked.
Yep, I think we can do that. And just for clarification, Councilmember Griffin, you're talking about people who are waiting in line to make entry into one of these establishments. Is that what you're seeing most of these complaints?
Yes, that's mostly the complaints. Yes, sir. I know that's a little different than these amendments, but it just popped up into my brain as you were talking about it, that's something else, that there's a lot of blocking of the sidewalks from these establishments still.
Yep, I've noticed that as well. So we can put that on the agenda for some discussion next time, maybe get some more input from legal staff about that. Mr. Mayor?
So I was just going to share that the planning department and legal and police, I'm sure, are involved as well. I've been reviewing line by line the late night ordinance that covers the rules for what Councilmember Griffin is referring to here. So I'm not sure their schedule and what committee they were planning on bringing that to, but
went before public safety last time as well, Mayor. So
it will be soon. It will be soon that they should, in the next month or two, that they complete that review. And I'm sure there'll be some proposed updates. It's been over 10 years, I think, since the late night ordinance passed, and it needed a little updating as well.
very good. Okay. Councilmember Sacre, I didn't want to leave you out by yourself. Any comments, questions?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just listening.
Okay. Glad to have the company. All right. We have not called for the vote on this last item. All those in favor of approving item number 9 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes, any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Well, again, thank you for those members who came from the other committee to join in and participate. Councilmember Saccharin, we missed the S team of Saccharin, Shealy, Shayed, and Susan. So we're glad to see you back over here joining us. We have a real estate meeting this afternoon.
Too, so thank you.
All right, we have a real estate meeting. Chief Courier, I saw you on here earlier. Anything that you need to bring to the attention of the committee before we adjourn?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity, though.
Always glad to have my chiefs around. Fill us in. All right, Chief Reynolds, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Chair Shake. Sorry, as you were introducing the chief, it just occurred to me. I would just like to thank the fire department, the fire marshal in particular, working with our zoning compliance team and livability. As those enforcement officers know, we finally got to court one of the establishments that operates way south on James Island in a neighborhood that's a longstanding African-American settlement community. And they are being, I would say, plagued by just the popularity of 2 establishments that are right there on Folly and Battery Island Drive. So, no one wants to stop free enterprise, but definitely there's a lot of reasons to be questioning the establishments for the way that they're occupying their space. So I really appreciate the dedication. And I know it's just a a royal pain to get down on Folly Road over a weekend as the beach traffic clogs up every avenue. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments, Councilmember Jackson. All right, anything else? Going, went. We are now adjourned. See most of y'all at 3